All right, welcome to this new lesson where we're going to work on importing, modifying, and importing a ring 3D object. So I'm at a site called turbosquid.com, which is a 3D assets website that has paid and free 3D objects. And so I did a search for ring, and I also updated the filters so that I only include free options. And there's a nice ring right here that is free. And I believe this is the one I'm going to be using, and it kind of gives you just, different looks at, the geometry and all that good stuff, and looks very nice. And if you click on download, all right, we could see it'll show you all your previous downloads that you've ever downloaded before. Mine's way, oh boy, I don't even see it. Let's do a control search for, okay, so where's my ring? There it is. It says Alliance ring. Okay, so I want to make sure that's the actual one I did show you. Yeah, that's the one we just looked at. And so you want to download that, and when you do that, it'll take you to this page you see here, and you will see the option to have the GLB file. Now, typically you would want to use this, and I did use this and downloaded it, imported it, but unfortunately they included a like a plane underneath the ring. I don't want that plane. So how do you get rid of it? Well, you could import it and hide it with JavaScript, but it's best just to get rid of it from the model itself. That means you need access to some 3D software. Blender is a completely 100% free and open source 3D. It's very powerful, but it's not very heavy. It's a quick download. And so I would download Blender. If it's only just for this tutorial, you can delete it afterwards, but I highly suggest if you get into Three.js and 3D websites in general, learning how to create your own 3D models and how to sculpt them. You can completely do that in Blender. So Blender 3D, if you type that in, you come over here, you click download, and you'll be able to download this for Mac OS, Linux, Windows, all that good stuff. And you can optionally donate and all that good stuff. And then once you have it installed, we can then download the .blend file right there. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to click on it. And then if you have Blender installed, it will open this up. And so if I take my mouse scroll wheel, you can see that big element right there in the background. Delete. Yeah, that's all we have to do is hit the delete key, select it, hit delete. Then come over here, File, Save As, or Export. Let me zoom up for you. We want to use GLTF 2.0, and notice it says in parentheses GLB or GLTF files. So you want to choose that, and you want to save that somewhere on your computer, if not in the correct folder, as a GLB file. All right, so right there, notice it says GLB. We're going to call it ring.glb. Now I already have mine set up, so I'm just going to exit that. Don't save it. And I'm going to take a look at my reference code real quick, and we're going to put this in just the public folder itself. So if we reveal this, I'm going to double click into public and paste in ring.glb. It's 384 kilobytes. So it's a little bit heavy, but not terrible. Okay. So now that we have that, remember we had the function where it says middle stuff, all right? So this is where we have to load up the ring. And again, if you recall from the previous lessons, the way you load up is through the GLTF loader right here. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with all of that necessary code in order to get that stuff working essentially. So the first thing we do is we call the loader.load ring.glb, because that's where it's looking at. It's in the public folder root. Okay, so I'm gonna close those off. And again, loader is defined not yet, unfortunately. So let's get that outside of the function call. And we're just going to simply say const loader equals new GLTF loader. So now we can load this in. And once it's been loaded, we can then go ahead and simply add it and make some adjustments here. So the ring, and again, the ring is also has to be defined above as well. So we're going to say let ring equals null. Again, we used this technique as well in the previous lesson. All right, so now we have our ring. We tie it to the GLTF scene. We're setting the ring position set at 0, 0, 0, and I'm scaling it down half the size of what it is. Now, honestly, at this point, I'm not sure what's going to happen to the code itself, if we're going to actually see anything. If I refresh, get out our console, we can see there is an error. All right, so scene is not yet defined. The reason this is happening because we need to add a couple more variables that are defined out here. All right, so there's 2 more. We're going to say let contact rotation equals false. This will make sense when we get to the contact section. But we also are defining some variables, renderer, scene, and camera, and that's all for the Three.js setup stuff. So let's save it now. And okay, so now we can see, let's get this going. Now, right now, being the fact that we don't see the ring, I'm not concerned about too much because we need to finish the code anyhow. So now we have scene.add_ring, and outside of that, we're going to create a timeline through GSAP. So we're going to say const timeline equals gsap.timeline scroll trigger. All right. And by the way, let's see what the ring position, that might be the thing that's affecting us, our inability to see the ring. It might be, I'm not 100% certain. I still do not see, I'm gonna make sure there's no errors or anything. So there's no errors. And I really think the issue is we probably just don't yet see the ring, mainly because, let me make sure it's not anywhere else. It's not in the correct position, essentially. So I could get dat.gui in here and try to get it to show up and everything, but X, Y, and Z, we can maybe do a -1 there. Just trying to see if we can get it to show up. Now, we can just continue on without seeing this ring graphic. I'm not too concerned about that. This part right here, the scroll trigger, this is going to be specifically for the detail section or the inspection section. All right, so the trigger ends up being section.details, and we're going to do a start and end call right here with top bottom, bottom top, and then scrub true. And then outside of that, we're going to have some defaults, and those defaults are just the easing and power 3 out, a duration of 3 as well. All right, so now after we defined that timeline, let's see here. Oh, we're also affecting the ring with this as well, the ring.position. All right, so let's save this and see what happens. All right, so I'm not seeing anything. I'm gonna go ahead and pause and make sure that we can see our ring graphic. All right, so after looking at this probably for a good 20 minutes, I figured out the issue. So this is what the code looks like. I'm fairly certain I left it the same from what I just paused. We can see we have this closing here. So this loader.load, the only thing inside of at this point is this code right here, the ending of the timeline right here. And then we have our, all the other stuff that we put inside of that function. We need to call another function in order to get what we're calling the render loop or the tick function in place. And so to do that, and again, this is what we've seen this before as well. And so we're just tying everything and putting it all inside of a function that we'll then call. So outside of our first function, we're going to paste this. So we're going to call it function init render loop. All right, and then this is all the stuff from before that we had from the boilerplate from the Three.js starter. So we can see we have if ring, if it exists, then we could also see if contact rotation doesn't exist. Right now it's not going to exist because we don't have the contact form stuff up yet, or the contact section, because basically once it gets to that section, we're going to change how it rotates with this if-else section right here. And then we just have our renderer call and the tick. So now we have to call this function right here, which is why it's stemmed out. We haven't called it yet, right here. Okay, so if we save that, then this is what we're going to see. we're going to see a black ring in the center. And that's because the reason it's black is because we don't have any lights added yet. So we might as well go ahead and add the lighting as well. So for the lighting, what we'll do is, let me real quickly take a look at what we've got going on here. Let's see. Yeah, so for our lighting, we're going to create a directional light. And this will go just beneath our Three.js timeline stuff right here. All right, so we have our ending call of our Three.js timeline. So right there, before the function or the load function ends, we're going to add a directional light of light blue at the intensity of 10. I changed the Z index here, and we've seen .add the directional light. So now we could see this directional light right here. Very, very cool. If we scroll down, look at that. Now the reason this works is because if we go up here, we'll see that we have our timeline. So we create the scroll trigger, section details is the trigger, top bottom scrub true, and then we're just changing, we're using a 2. Once the scroll trigger is activated based on these parameters, we're changing the Z index to 2.5. And also, not the Z index, I'm sorry, I'm getting my CSS mixed up with my JavaScript. We changed the Z value to 2.5 and the Y to negative 0.34. And then we also changed the rotation as well, optionally right here, and it starts at the same time. Okay. So then remember, you can use dat.gui to figure out all of these various properties. And if you wanted to do that, you would the code here would be, for instance, like this. So we could just come out here and say if GUI ring folder, and then for that single ring we have position, rotation, and scale all set up right here. If you wanted to do that, and this is the old code right there. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete that since I'm not going to be using it. I already know my values since I've used dat.gui already. And I think that's going to be a good part to stop. In the next lesson, what we're going to do is we're going to get this part working as well. Because if you recall, the initial project, we need to create a function that will rotate between 3 different words right here.